Welcome to Simpler Bible, a daily journey to biblical understanding. One of the things that you may have noticed is that over the last couple of weeks, as we've looked at Joshua and Judges and Ruth, you may have felt like a lot of the theology is missing, right? So Genesis through Deuteronomy establishes all of the theology that we're going to be using for the rest of the Bible. And so that's why we covered so much deep theology. Now we are kind of in a single narrative of judges and kings, these rulers over Israel. Now the nation of Israel is in the promised land, what we saw them moving towards from Exodus 12 through Joshua 4. And so now you have to kind of think of the judges, you have to think of Samuel and the kings. You kind of have to think of that as one singular narrative. This is now just kind of the story of the nation of Israel and what they have done with all of the theology from Exodus or Genesis, really, righteous by faith. What they have done now with all this theology from Genesis to Deuteronomy. Everything else now that we're kind of seeing is application to the theology that was already laid out for us. So don't miss that. So we're in 1 Samuel today. I love this story that we're getting into. There's some really cool, neat things, I think. And 1 Samuel chapter 1 and 2 today, we've got a lot to cover, so let's dive in. There was a certain man of Ramathaim Zophim in the hill country of Ephraim, whose name was Elkanah. So he's of the hill country of Ephraim, son of Jehoram, the son of Elihu, the son of Tohu, the son of Zuph, an Ephrathite. Ephrathites are also related to the people of Bethlehem. So whenever you see, it's hard to talk and spell at the same time, hope that's right. Whenever you see Ephrathite, not Ephraimite, Ephrathite, that's connected to Bethlehem, which of course is where Jesus will be born. This man, Elkanah, had two wives. The name of one was Hannah. The name of the other was Peninnah. And Peninnah had children, but Hannah had no children. Now this man used to go up year by year from the city to worship and to sacrifice to the Lord of hosts there at Shiloh. Shiloh is the place where they've been meeting. We saw that back in Joshua 18. This is it was established as a place of worship. And his two sons, were the two sons of Eli, Hophni and Phinehas, were priests to the Lord. On the day when Elkanah sacrificed, he would give portions to Peninnah, his wife, and to all of her sons and daughters. But to Hannah, he gave a double portion because he loved her, though the Lord had closed her womb. And her rival used to provoke her grievously to irritate her because the Lord had closed her womb. So she's provoking her. She's making fun of her. She's teasing her. This makes us think a little bit of Genesis 21, 8 through 10, when Isaac was being made fun of by Ishmael, right? So the Peninnah is mocking Hannah. But anyway, so her rival used to provoke her grievously, so she went on year by year, and as often as she went up to the house of the Lord, she would provoke her, and Hannah would weep and would not eat. Elkanah, her husband, said to her, Hannah, why do you weep? Why do you not eat? Why is your heart sad? Am I not more valuable to you than 10 sons? And after they had eaten and drunk in Shiloh, Hannah rose. Now Eli the priest was sitting by the seat beside the doorpost of the temple of the Lord. And so the temple of the Lord at this point would be the tent of meeting, because the temple itself has not yet been built. So this is the tent of meeting. This is still from the days of Moses. She was deeply distressed and prayed to the Lord and wept bitterly. She vowed a vow, saying, O Lord of hosts, if you will indeed look on the affliction of your servant and remember me and not forget your servant, but will give to your servant a son, then I will give him to the Lord all the days of his life, and no razor shall touch his head. In other words, she's committing him to be a Nazirite. That's the only mention we'll have of this, but if you've never pictured Samuel with really long hair, maybe you should, because it appears that he is a Nazirite. As she continued praying before the Lord, Eli observed her mouth. So this is Hannah's prayer. She's praying under her breath. Eli's watching her. Verse 13. Hannah was speaking in her heart. Only her lips moved. Her voice was not heard. Therefore, Eli took her to be a drunk woman. You got to love that that's the priest's first response. Hannah's over there. She's weeping and she's mouthing the words that she's praying to the Lord. And Eli's like, woman, you're drunk. So he says in verse 14 to her, how long will you go on being drunk? Put your wine away from you. And Hannah answered, no, my Lord. I'm a woman troubled in spirit. I've drunk neither wine nor strong drink. I've been pouring my soul out before the Lord. Do not regard your servant as a worthless woman, for all along I've been speaking out of my great anxiety and vexation. Eli answers, then go in peace, and the God of Israel grant your petition that you have made to him. She said, let your servant find favor in your eyes. And the woman went away and ate, and her face was no longer sad. They rose early in the morning and worshiped before the Lord, and they went back to their house at Ramah. Keep that in your mind. That'll be important later. And Elkanah knew Hannah, his wife, and the Lord remembered her. And in due time, Hannah conceived and bore a son, and she named him Samuel, for she said, I have asked him from the Lord. The man Elkanah and his house went up to offer the vow to the Lord for the yearly sacrifice and to pay his vow. But Hannah did not go up, for she said to her husband, as soon as the child is weaned, I will bring him so that he can stay in the presence of the Lord and dwell there forever. Elkanah, her husband, said to her, do whatever seems best to you. Wait until you have weaned him. Only may the Lord establish his word. So the woman remained and nursed her son until she weaned him. When she had weaned him, she took him up along with a 3-year-old bull, an ephah of flour, a skin of wine, and she brought him to the house of the Lord, still at Shiloh, and the child was young. And they slaughtered the bull, and they brought the child to Eli. And she said, my Lord, as you live, my Lord, I am the woman who is standing here in your presence praying to the Lord. And this is the child I prayed for. And the Lord has granted him to me, and I have made granted my petition that I made to him. Therefore, I have lent him back to the Lord. As long as he lives, he is given to the Lord. And he worshiped the Lord there. Now, chapter 2, Hannah's prayer. Hannah prayed and said, my heart exults in the Lord. My strength is exalted in the Lord. My mouth derides my enemies because I rejoice in your salvation. There is none holy like the Lord. There is none besides you. There is no rock like our God. This feels a little bit to me, it reminds me a little bit of Mary's prayer when she is pregnant with Jesus in the New Testament. There's some similarities. Talk no more very proudly. Let no arrogance come from your mouth, for the Lord is a God of knowledge, and by him actions are weighed. The bows of the mighty are broken, but the feeble bind on strength. Those who were full have hired themselves out for bread, but those who were hungry have ceased to hunger. The barren have borne 7, and she who has many children is forlorn. All right, so this is interesting. Those who are full, those who used to be full, used to be blessed and abundant, have now hired themselves out for bread, and those who used to be hungry have ceased from hunger. Those who were barren have now borne 7 children, but the one who had many children is forlorn. And it's interesting to me because she was barren, and the barren one bore a son. And it reminds me a little bit of Isaiah 54:1, which is quoted for us in Galatians 4:27. And the idea here is it says that more are the children of the desolate. Sorry, are the children of the. Oh gosh, I just fell out of my head. It's comparing the 2 wives. It's comparing the 2 wives of Abraham. So it's comparing Sarah, and it's comparing, she wasn't really his wife, but Hagar. And it says, more are the children of those who did not have a husband than the one who has a husband. The desolate one, the barren one, has borne children. And so there's this reference here that's kind of to Sarah being barren and then her children becoming the source of the blessing. And so it's interesting because it's kind of foreshadowed here for us that this woman, she's praying, Hannah's praying, and she's praying about her son, and she was the barren woman, but now out of her barrenness has come a blessing. And so anyway, it just makes me think of Isaiah 54:1. I'll write more about that in the blog. The Lord kills, she goes on to say in verse 6, the Lord kills and brings to life. He brings down to Sheol and he raises up. The Lord makes poor and makes rich. He brings low. He exalts. He raises up the poor from the dust. He lifts the needy from the ash heap to make them sit with princes and inherit a seat of honor. For the pillars of the earth are the Lord's, and on them he has set the world. He will guard the feet of his faithful ones, but the wicked will be cut off in darkness. For not by might shall a man prevail. The adversaries of the Lord will be broken to pieces. Against them he will thunder in heaven. The Lord will judge the ends of the earth, and he will give strength to the king and exalt the power of his anointed one. Then Elkanah went home to Ramah. Remember, keep that in mind. We'll look at that a couple more places. And the boy ministered to the Lord in the presence of Eli, the priest. Okay, we got to pause here for just a minute. The boy ministered to the Lord in the presence of Eli, the priest. How is it that Samuel gets to minister in the presence of the priest? How is it? We already know that only the Levites get to do that. We already know that the people who work with the altar, the people who work in the actual tent of meeting, the people who work with the table of showbread and around the Ark of the Covenant, we already know that you're only allowed to do that if you're a Kohathite, one of the descendants of Levi. And so how is it that Samuel, gets to do that? Because when we go back up here to chapter 1, it says that he is from Ephraim. It says that he's from Ephraim and that he's an Ephrathite, which would be Bethlehem. So a couple of things we need to piece together. His father, Samuel's father, Elkanah, is not of the tribe of Ephraim. Samuel's father Elkanah lives in the land of Ephraim. You might remember from when Joshua was splitting up the land, we covered it very, very briefly, but when Joshua was splitting up the land, the Levites don't have any inheritance of their own. They get cities out of the various tribes of Israel. And the Levites live interspersed with all these tribes of Israel. You might find it interesting to note, you might not find this interesting at all, but you might find it interesting to note that the Kohathites, the people who were specifically responsible for the Ark of the Covenant, for the temple, for the Holy of Holies, the Kohathites, they received an inheritance from Ephraim. They received their cities from the tribe of Ephraim. And so when you go to 1 Chronicles 6, 31 through 38, and it traces the lineage of Elkanah, the very same lineage we see up here in chapter 1, verse 1, where it says that it is Elkanah, the son of Jehoram, the son of Elihu, the son of Toah, the son of Zuph. When it says that, that is repeated for us, absolutely repeated for us in 1 Chronicles 6, 31 through 38. And it traces Elkanah's lineage all the way back to Levi. Elkanah is of Levi. And not only is Elkanah of Levi, Elkanah is of the Kohathites of Levi, which means the reason that Elkanah is going up year after year is for his priestly duty. He is a Kohathite whose responsibility it is to be one of these guys. Maybe at this point he's too old. The priests were only allowed to be priests from 20 to 50 years old. And in another place it says 30 to 50 years old. So maybe he's already retired. But Samuel is the son of a Levite priest. And we're not told that in the genealogy of 1 Samuel. We're only told that in the really boring 9 chapters of 1 Chronicles where it says so-and-so begat so-and-so begat so-and-so begat so-and-so. People always ask, they go, is there anything of value in these 9 chapters? And I go, yeah, there's some, but it's hard. It's hard to read because you're reading name after name after name after name. So why is it that Samuel is allowed to minister in the presence of the Lord? Why is it that he's allowed to be a priest? It's because his father was a priest. His father's a Kohathite. Samuel's a Kohathite. He's of the tribe of Levi. He is a priest of the Lord, which is why he's allowed to be a priest, why he's allowed to be around these things. And I'll write a little bit more about that in the blog, but I used to be bugged by this because I was like, wait a minute. I would read it as though his father was of the tribe of Ephraim. And I'd say, why is this guy of Ephraim getting to work in the tabernacle? Why is he getting to work in the tent of meeting? The Ephraimites aren't supposed to work in the tent of meeting. It used to drive me nuts. And then years ago, 1 Chronicles 1 through 9, so-and-so begat so-and-so, just tedious. Years ago, I decided, okay, I'm going to map out all the names of this. And I just did. And I just mapped out all the names. And I found Elkanah in there and Samuel. And I was like, crud, I'd missed it before. And so Joshua 21:5 tells us that the Ephraimites gave their cities to the Kohathites. We see in 1 Chronicles 6, 31 through 38 that Elkanah is a Kohathite. That makes Samuel a Kohathite, whose job it would be. Now, he was early. You're not supposed to be there until you're 20 or 30. He's there as a 3-year-old. It's different. There's something special about Samuel, but he is absolutely in the position he's supposed to be in. So look at verse 12. Now the sons of Eli were worthless men. They did not know the Lord. These are your priests, by the way. You have Eli, Hophni, and Phinehas. And the sons of Eli, these 2 priests, Hophni and Phinehas, did not know the Lord and are acting as priests. The custom of the priest with the people was that when any man offered a sacrifice, the priest's servant would come while the meat was boiling, and with a 3-pronged fork in his hand, he would thrust it into the pan or the kettle or the cauldron or the pot, and all that the fork brought up, the priest would take for himself. This is what they did at Shiloh to all the Israelites who came there. So you might not remember this from the book of Leviticus, but out of every sacrifice, a portion of the sacrifice was provided for the priest and his family, for their food. So the custom has become, it wasn't this way in Leviticus, the custom has become that when they're boiling the meat that's an offering, the priest would stick in a 3-pronged fork, and whatever came out, that was his dinner. That was his portion. It was just kind of up to the Lord. Like whatever came out, if you got 2 pieces of meat on that sucker, great. If you got a little piece of meat, that was God's portion provided for you. Listen to what Eli's wicked sons did. Verse 15. Moreover, before the fat was burned, the priest's servant would come and say to the man, say, give me the meat for the priest to roast. He will not accept boiled meat from you, but only raw. And if the man said, let them burn the fat away first, and then take whatever you want, he would say, no, give it to you now. And if not, I'll take it by force. So Hophni and Phinehas were looking over the meat before it got put in the pot, picking the piece that they liked the best, and were taking it before the fat had been burned away and boiled away. Why was that a problem? Well, Leviticus 3 verse 16 says that the fat belongs to the Lord. The blood of the offering belongs to the Lord, and the fat belongs to the Lord. So these guys, they're behaving wickedly. They don't know the Lord. They're not honoring the sacrifices, nothing. And they have this young kid hanging around who God is going to raise up to kind of bring about justice. Thus the sin of the young men was very great in the sight of the Lord, and the men treated the offering of the Lord with contempt. Now Samuel was ministering before the Lord as a boy. And then it goes on to say in verse 21, and the young man Samuel grew in the presence of the Lord. Now, let me finish this really quickly here. Eli is going to rebuke his sons at the end of chapter 2. And he said to them, he said, verse 23, why are you doing such wicked things? I hear of all of your evil dwellings from the people. No, my sons, it is not a good report that I hear from the people of the Lord spreading abroad about you. And he says in verse 25 something key. If someone sins against man, God will mediate for him. But if someone sins against the Lord, who can intercede? And I love this text. And here's why. Because Eli, the priest, is supposed to be the one who intercedes before people, before the Lord. He goes, who could possibly intercede between man and God? The answer to that is 1 Timothy 2:5. There is one mediator between man and God, the person Jesus Christ. Jesus Christ is the one who can mediate between man and God. So Samuel's continuing to grow in stature and favor with the Lord. And then look at verse 27. There came a man of God to Eli, and he said, did I reveal myself to the house of your father when they were in Egypt, subject to Pharaoh? Did I choose him out of all the tribes of Israel to be my priest, to go up to my altar and burn, to wear an ephod before me? I gave to the house of your father all my offerings by fire from the people of Israel. Why then do you scorn my sacrifices and offerings that I command you today by fattening yourselves in the choices of my people? And he says, the God of Israel declares this, that you would be the priest, that you go in and out before me. Look at verse 30. Far be it from me, for those who honor me I will honor, and those who despise me will be lightly esteemed. The days are coming, he says, when I will cut off your strength and the strength of your father's house, and there will not be an old man in all your house. Then in distress you will look with an envious eye on all the prosperity on Israel, and there shall not be an old man in all your house forever. The only one of you that I won't kill shall be spared to weep out his eyes and to grieve out his heart, and all the descendants of your house will die by the sword. And I will raise up instead for myself a faithful priest, and I will build him a sure house. Now listen, this man of God, we're not told his name, comes and pronounces a judgment on the house of Eli. And that is going to unfold for us over the rest of the book of 1 Samuel, 2 Samuel, and 1 Kings. And I will include all those details in the blog because we're out of time today. Thanks for watching, and I will see you tomorrow when we get into chapters 3 and 4 of 1 Samuel. Thank you so much for journeying with us today at Simpler Bible through another section of Scripture where we come to know and understand God a little bit better. Look, if you're brand new to Simpler Bible, we have all sorts of resources available for you. Go to our website, simplerbible.com, and there you can find these videos, you can find our podcast, you can find links to our social media, and you can even find a blog post with additional scriptures if you want to go into a little bit more study than we had time to cover in this podcast and video today. We hope that this tool will be exactly that for you, a tool. Not something that replaces your daily walk with God, but something that enhances your daily walk with God and helps you to know and enjoy Him more. Thank you so much for being part of this, and we'll see you again tomorrow.